Some of you have asked and some of you have wondered, where is the first place in Scripture that's recorded that talks about tithe, talks about giving? And I've stated before, there's the story of Melchizedek and the offering made to him. But the first command that I could find is in Leviticus 27. So I thought I'd just start by sharing this with you. Leviticus 27:30, it reads this way. A tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord. A tithe of everything from the land. And then I'll bet this next part would surprise you, but I did not make this up. I love to make things up. I didn't make this up. Whoever would redeem any of their tithe must add a fifth of the value to it. In other words, if you spend, according to this passage, what should be given in a tithe, then when you turn it in, you need to add another fifth to it. That's what it says in Leviticus chapter 27, verse 30. Again, I couldn't make that up if I wanted to. That is what I could find for the first piece of Scripture that commands a tithe to be given. So here I am in the middle of a series on tithing, the middle of a series on stewardship, money management, whatever phrase you like to use. Maybe you dislike all of them, but here I am in the middle of preaching on that, and I want you to know that I am human, and I have been tempted this week. Some of you know, and some of you might not. You know, my degree was in electronics engineering from Purdue, and I just have this really, really soft and vulnerable spot in my heart for all things audio. I really, really enjoy working with circuits, and I thought for my career, if God hadn't stepped in and ruined things, I thought I was going to work with Crown International, and I was going to be manufacturing, helping produce audio circuits worldwide. And so I have this spot in my heart that's vulnerable because that's not true. I really want all the time, like electronic components, especially related to audio. It's my weakness. Ooh, Jen, and she looks and what the heck is that? Don't worry, we need it, okay? Trust me, as your husband and as part of this family, I would never do anything to harm us, but we need that. And she knows better. But this week, I promise you, again, I didn't make this up to fit in. I have this message and this happens. You can almost see Satan at work in the world. I'm online and I'm looking through one of my apps that goes out and searches for deals, and you can sort by category, so it's dangerous for me anyway. And I'm shopping by specific categories that are good deals, and what it brings up is the best deal I have seen since I was a young man coming out of college on a new stereo receiver. So the thing that does surround sound for your home theater, the amplifier that drives your main speakers for music, the doohickey that has so many cool lights on the front, you can turn the lights off and let this stereo receiver light up your room, is on sale. And it's not just a stereo receiver. It is the top of the line model that I happen to be a fan of that brand. And it is, listen, not 10% off. Sometimes we think like a new microphone, it would make church better. Whatever it is, we can convince ourselves that if we only could acquire, if we only could get, and our lives would be better and we would be happier. But here's something I want to pass on to you. I have never been at a funeral where a person's been remembered for how much they had or what they had. Okay? Now, I'm relatively young in my ministry career, and I have done a good number of funerals. This church and the previous church, I've been a part of funerals at the church I came out of. I've been a part of a decent number of funerals, and I have yet to do a funeral where the person that they are remembering was remembered because of how much they had or what they had. It kind of flies in the face of life consists of what we have or how much we have. I have done funerals for people that were really pretty wealthy. They had means when they passed away. There was a lot of paperwork involved in deciding where their inheritance was going to go. I've done funerals for people like this. They weren't remembered for what they had. The family didn't talk to me about how much they had. I've done funeral services for a business owner's son. Odds are he would take over the business. That wasn't a topic of conversation at their funeral. I have done a service for a person who had almost nothing. His home was in shambles. He had one car that barely ran. He had almost nothing of worldly goods to speak of. Doesn't matter, rich, poor, inheriting. Nobody in the funerals I've been a part of has ever been remembered, and I have never spoken about what someone had. They talk about the life they lived and what they did with their time. And if they were generous, that gets remembered sometimes, but nobody has ever remembered someone for how much they had. Yet this is the message we continue to get in society. This is the phrase that lives in the back of our minds, that can make life better. That can be the key to my happiness. And to prove it to you, I have selected just a few things, and I pick on the one I always pick on to start with: save money, live better. Walmart. I hate that slogan. I just want to go find whoever is running Walmart today and slap them personally. Like, hello, my name is Devin Cook. I'm pastor at Brookston United Methodist Church. I hate that phrase. Save money, live better, because you know your life is better when you save money. It is on receivers. Save money, live better. That's a slogan of the largest retailer in the U.S. Here's another sign that we live with this mentality of money or the things that money can buy makes our life better. Listen to this. This just about floored me. Financial investors as an occupation. You want to be a financial investor? It is rising at a rate of 30%. Each year it's going on. There are a third more people entering into this as a profession than there were the year before. That is crazy to me. People that take up the job of managing other people's wealth. It is in the top 10 jobs in the U.S. Or how about this one? And I've shared this before, but every time I read it, I need to go get a reality check and take a shower and lay down for 2 hours. Okay? Listen to this. There's more than 2.5 billion, okay, more than 2.5 billion square feet of self-storage in the U.S. Is anyone else disturbed by that, or am I alone? There is more than 2.5 billion square feet of self-storage in the U.S. Folks, that ought to just make you weep in the pews. We have enough stuff that we need roughly 3 times the size of Manhattan to store the stuff that we're not even using. 2.5 billion square feet of storage units in the U.S. And by the way, that is over 85% of what the entire world has in storage units. Most of us would say money can't buy us happiness. And we know it can't buy us love, thank goodness for the Beatles. But our attitude seems to be this: the way we live, what triggers in the back of our brain and rolls around in our head, what society tells us, it seems to be this: you can't take it with you when you go. We know that. We recognize that. You can't take it with you when you go. So you might as well enjoy it while you're here. That seems to be the mentality that fuels us today. And Jesus, thank goodness, talked about this. I bet you didn't know Jesus talked about lifestyles, did you? Yeah, he did. Specifically related to finances. Jesus had this conversation in Luke chapter 12. And I'm just amused by the way it starts. So instead of getting right into the teaching, I've got this beautiful little intro in Luke 12:13. Like the teaching begins at 15. This just cracked me up. Okay. Someone came from the crowd and said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide his inheritance with me." And Jesus said, and again, I didn't make this up. This is just what cracked me up as I'm reading the Bible. This is in the Bible, okay? Somebody says, "Teacher," like there's Jesus. He claims to be the Son of God. He has amazing teachings. It just floors me. He knows about what God's like. He can heal the sick, cure the blind, make people who can't walk, tell us every secret about how the world works and how people should act. Jesus, hey, tell my brother to split his inheritance with me. What the heck? And Jesus' response is, "Man, who appointed me as judge or referee between you and your brother?" I love that. That's the intro to this passage. Of all the things this guy could ask, he gets Jesus' attention. He asks about money. Jesus says, Like, I've got more important things to do than settle a quarrel between you and your brother. Parents, try that with your children, okay? But no. He says, who appointed me as a judge or referee between you and your brother? Listen. Jesus begins to tell a story then. Guys asking about money. Jesus is like, I know there's a greater need here. Listen, watch out, Jesus says. When Jesus says watch out, by the way, keep reading. He has some pretty good insight about life. Watch out, Jesus says. Guard yourself against all kinds of greed. After all, listen to this. If you're sleeping, wake up. If you're making notes, write this down. If you're not, write this down. If you don't want to write this down, lock it in and then write it down. Guard yourself against all kinds of greed. After all, one's life is not determined by one's possessions, even when someone is very wealthy. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Did anybody write it down? You're sad. Luke 12, verse 15. After all, one's life isn't determined by one's possessions, even when someone is very wealthy. Maybe you didn't hear it. Rewind. After all, Jesus says, one's life isn't determined by one's possessions, even when someone is very wealthy. Then he told them a parable, okay? So let me expand on that, Jesus says. A certain rich man's land produced a bountiful crop. He said to himself, what will I do? I have no place to store my harvest. Then he thought, here's what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. That's where I'll store all my grain and goods. I'll say to myself, you've stored up plenty of goods, enough for several years. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and enjoy yourself. That's his plan. But God said to him, fool, tonight you will die. And who will get the things you've prepared for yourself? So he tells that little parable, Jesus, and then he wraps it up with this question, or this statement, excuse me. He says, this is the way it will be for those who hoard things for themselves and aren't rich towards God. Starts by saying one's life isn't determined by one's possessions and goes to that statement. Maybe you hear that and you say, well, that's scripture, that's Bible times, that's old times. It's hard to relate. Like, maybe I get the parable, maybe not. Oh, let me just put it in modern day terms. Thank you. Then Jesus said, watch out. Starts the same way. See how I did that? It's clever. Guard yourselves against all kinds of greed. Be careful of stuff and the want for it. After all, your life isn't determined by your possessions, even if you're really wealthy. Jesus told this parable. A certain young man's up-and-coming business really took off. The man said to him, what will I do? I have more money than I know what to do with. So he thought, here's what I'll do. I will build a new house. I'm going to need it, after all, to have room for my new camper and my fancy new vehicle. In my house, I'm going to need a top-of-the-line entertainment system along with the highest tier cable package money can buy. It's only fitting for my nice new house. I will have an unlimited data plan and a phone for everyone in my family so we can communicate better. I will have season tickets to the Colts. I will never miss a chance to eat out and then take in a movie. This will be the good life. I'll enjoy these things so much. But God said to him, fool, tonight you're going to die. And who will get the things you've prepared for yourself, and how will you enjoy them? This is the way it will be for those who hoard things, stuff, and are not rich toward God. Jesus told this parable, and he dead on nailed a mindset that must have been prevalent at that time. I don't think Jesus often went around teaching on things people couldn't relate to. Jesus always taught with purpose. He taught to change people's hearts. And if he said that the mentality is when you get more, you got to have more, and the more you get, the more you need, and he said this is a problem, he must have just spot on nailed a mindset that was popular at that time. You know what I think? I think that mindset's pretty popular today. think Jesus just dead on nails some of us with that statement today. He started by saying that phrase, and I don't want you to miss it, so I'll say it once more. One's life isn't determined by one's possessions, even if you're very wealthy. And Jesus ended this teaching, he concluded it with, this is the way it will be for those who hoard things, who hoard stuff for themselves, but aren't rich towards God. You can have all the stuff in the world. If you're not rich towards God, generous towards God, if you don't live a life that just testifies in all areas that there is a God, it doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you right now, Jesus didn't say this directly, but I think it's in there. I'm going to tell you right now, you will not be happier. You will not live a better life. You will not be more complete because of what you have. I don't care if you're religious or non-religious, Christian or a different religion. This is true. Go and find me someone who truly believes that life consists of possessions and that that is the secret to life. And I will show you a person who is hollow and empty. Jesus said this is the way it will be, though, in his teaching, for those who are rich in the world but are not rich towards God. There's got to be something else there. For those of us that believe, there's got to be more to life then than just our possessions. And the question is, what is it? I wonder how many of you, when you hear this passage, are stung in your hearts a little bit. I wonder if I asked honestly, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but I wonder how many of you would say, that speaks to me. Like, I've been living as though possessions were first, and as far as rich towards God, I mean, well, I love God, sure I do. But you haven't been living like you are rich towards God. You haven't been generous with God. You haven't been letting God be evident in all areas of your life. So if we know this is true in our hearts, and again, I will testify based on the funerals I've done, I will testify based on people I've talked to, I will testify based on what I see in the news, that even the very, very rich end up caring more about things other than money or dying rich with not a lot else behind it. I will testify that this is true, that there's more to life than money and possessions. But if we know this is true in our hearts, again, whether we're religious or not, if we see it in Scripture, and Jesus says this outright, and you say to yourselves, like, I'm a Christian, I want to follow Jesus, I want to know what Jesus teaches, and that's how I'm going to live. Jesus teaches that. And if everybody can testify that that's true, then why do we continue to live as though the stuff that we have and the money that can buy that stuff is ours first and meant to be for our pleasure, and the more we have of it, the more pleasure we have? Why do we live as though that's what drives us, and that's what makes us well, and that's what keeps us, and that's what determines where we go in life? Why do we live as though all of that stuff is ours and it is for our good? Why? Do we not understand Jesus' teaching? Is the rest of Scripture not clear enough? Or do we ignore what's in our hearts, that there's more to life than stuff? We ignore that and we continue to live for stuff. I don't know. But we go on shopping sprees. Sometimes we have things we need and we can buy them, and sometimes we need to have things. And so we go on shopping sprees. And maybe we go to Walmart because we can save money and live better. And we go out and just purchase, like in bulk, all kinds of stuff. And we never give a second thought to, did we need all that? And could some of that go to the local church? We indulge our senses in any way we can. We find things that will help us feel good, that will help make us happy in some shallow way, that will say, yay, this is exciting, and now I've gotten a thrill off of that. And we never stop and think, how could I bless others? If I donated to my local church, how are they seeking to help others? We distract our realities. We get caught up in substances or pleasures or addictions or anything that will take us out of the reality we're in, because we never stop to consider, like, maybe in serving someone else, maybe in loving someone else, Maybe in reaching out and offering hope to someone else, there's real joy. But it's a lot easier just to distract ourselves from reality and indulge in temporary pleasures. We feed addictions. We try to purchase the best of. We work until we are broken to earn money and the stuff that money can buy. And we forget entirely that Jesus said, life isn't made of possessions. And be careful if you're not generous towards God. In our church, on an average week, maybe some of you are numbers people. Let me just put this out here. On an average week, I've looked through 3.5 years of data. I have to enter this in and submit it to the conference, and they track it for whatever purposes they do. But here's what I found, okay? Over 3 years for this church, so in our church, we tithe at an average rate of $2,500 each week. Some of you don't want to hear dollars and cents and you don't care, then ignore that, all right? We tithe at an average rate of $2,500 each week. That's the average. If that's 10% of our income, what does that say our average income is for that week? And I promise you, as a collective church, our income is greater than what we're giving. So in that way, you are saying all of those things that you've named, Pastor Devin, or the things that I really like that you didn't mention, so maybe I'm exempt, they are more important. They make my life happy. They make my life filled. Those are the things that are at the top of my life priority list. And though I like to be in church, though sometimes I feel good about church, really, giving to church and being rich towards God isn't a priority. It's a whatever's left. That says to me that a lot of times when you told me, like coming in, for instance, when I came here, I asked the question of everybody that was in the church. I passed out flyers and I went to meetings and small groups and I said, what would you like to see happen? And almost the number one answer, it was actually by a landslide the number one answer. People said, I want to see others in the pews. And so as that's happened slowly, what you've told me is, it's not really so much others in the pews I want to see. It's, I want to hear a good sermon, which I'm happy to deliver every week. Boo, go ahead, I don't care. You're like, I want to hear a good sermon, and I want to be comfortable, and I don't really want to change anything around me because I'd have to give towards that. Okay? We can continue to add people to the pews. My personal goal will never be to add people to the pews. It will be to make a difference in their lives for Jesus Christ, to offer them hope where they don't have hope, to give them help where they need help, to show them a preferred future that they want to live into rather than the one they're living into now. But if you want to put it in terms of people in the pews, that's fine. But if you continue to give at the rate you're giving, you're saying, really, that just sounded good, so I was happy to present that to you. But I don't mean it. And behind that, what you're saying is there are a lot of things I like to spend money on. And the church just isn't one of them, I'm sorry. Your part is 10%. And if you take that 10%, and I'm looping back to that verse I started with, and you spend it on something else, you redeem your tithe somewhere else, God says, I want interest on my money. Maybe you don't like that teaching. I'm sorry, you go rewrite Scripture, okay? I'm just telling it to you like I find it. But more important than giving 10% and meeting a rule is that Jesus says, here's the danger. Remember those words, watch out? More important than making a rule, more important than saying, okay, love God, check. Go to church, check. Give to church, check. Like, more important than that is that Jesus said, watch out. I don't need your rules. I want you to be careful with your hearts. So look out, because here's what's going to happen. The pleasures of this life, the stuff you can accumulate, your goods and your income, they are going to creep in on you, and they are going to choke out what's really important. And you're going to start focusing on all those worldly goods, and you're going to lose out on helping others and being rich towards God. So again, if you give 10% or you don't give 10%, you choose to tithe, you choose not to tithe, you choose to contribute generously to the church or you don't, that's all great. I really hope that you do. But what's more important, Jesus says, watch out. Because as soon as you start to hoard that stuff, as soon as you start to make reasons why you can't share that stuff, as soon as you start to say, God, this really doesn't belong to you, or it might, but I'm taking it anyway, Jesus says, you are in danger. And Jesus loved to save people from danger, loved to turn them new directions, loved to help them down a better path. So he said, watch out for that. I came up with a short list. In fact, I wanted it to be a short list. I wanted to do it this way, so here's how I did it. If these are my notes, it's the scribbly part right here I'm talking about to let you know I allowed myself 1 minute, 60 seconds of time. You know how many milliseconds that is? Neither do I. 1 minute. I said, let's see if I can name the things in this church that are actively giving people a better preferred future, that are actively moving people's hearts towards Jesus, that are actively helping to reach out, that our church does, that can make a difference in someone's life. And this is what I came up with. 1 minute, and I started the timer, and I'm not kidding, realized I didn't even have a pen. 3 seconds later, I had 57 seconds, and here's what I scratched out. Friends Club, where we averaged 20 children every Sunday. We had Friends Club last year. Youth group, where we had so many great get-togethers and then sent them on to be better leaders through Scouts. Small groups and Bible studies. Every new person I encourage to be a part of a Bible study or a small group, every one of them, everyone, don't ever say every one of them said it was a good experience. That they grew themselves, or they got to know someone else, or best of all, they saw God in a new way. BASE, the after-school program we run here, and my favorite story of all time about BASE is the kid that doesn't go to church. And when we had youth group, he chose to come to youth group. And he recited the story of Joseph detail for detail, better than I knew it myself. I'm like, where'd you learn that? He said, your BASE program when I was in it. The food pantry that you don't get to see people coming in and out of. If we can do the warehouse, you will change that because we'll need your help supporting it. But you don't get to see the people coming in and out of it each week. You don't get to see the people in need. People that say, I live here in the community for reasons X, Y, and Z, I need help. Can I use your food? And I say, yes. Choir, praise band, and bums. People that have musical ability that then turn and use that and have a great time practicing together and then help lead you in worship with it. Super Saturday, service to the community. This is a relatively new thing, but our missions committee, they said, how can we serve the town of Brookston? How can we be the hands and feet of Jesus? How can we represent this church in the local community? We did that by service through Super Saturday. We're planning another one. In the storm relief, again, as Brookston was nothing but a pile of trees, okay? Some of you, through your efforts, and the United Methodist Church, through its money, helped clean up those storms and those trees and the problems that were caused by them. And this is my favorite, okay? I did not count this because my minute was up. But anyone who's come into this church for the first time in a long time and they found themselves in church, or has happened in this church, have come to this church, and it's the first time in their life they've been a part of a church. And they're seeing a new reality that maybe there is hope in Jesus, and maybe there is a community that loves me, and maybe there is a better direction for my life. That was my short list done in 57 seconds of the various things that our church does, all of which, by the way, all of which are what life is about, add meaning to people's lives, change people's lives, but cannot be done without financial backing. I don't know how you think a church works. It's the largest volunteer organization in the United States. And what happens through it happens off of your dollars. So I'm not up here once again because I'm hoping for a pay raise, and I think if we roll the dice just right and I preach this sermon just right, I'm going to get a really fat pocket on this one. I'm not preaching this because I think through your generosity, if you give to the church, I will take it and purchase a new receiver. Okay? I'm not preaching this because I really want you to go check, I tithe now. I'm preaching this to you because I believe God has called us to be hope to the rest of the world. You and you and you and you and you and everyone that I didn't point to, you are called to be hope to the rest of the world. And Bill Hybels coined the phrase, and I'm just using it, the local church. Brookston United Methodist Church. Anywhere there is a gathered body of believers, you are the hands and feet of Jesus Christ, and you are hope to the world. But we need your hands and feet, and we need you to give 10%. And God says, I've given you so much. Take your 90% and enjoy life and all the goods of it. And I want you to hear this too, and I'll be done on this point, but please understand, it's not that God really needs that money. I believe God's working in the world, and whether you give or not, God's going to accomplish certain things. If I loan $20 out to somebody and they're like, hey, Pastor Devin, here's $2. Did I need the $2? I gave them the 20 to begin with. It's not that God needs your money. It's that we get to jump on board, do a part of what God is doing, and be that hope when you choose to give. And I'll say it again, as we approach our campaign to repair the roof, to fix up the bathrooms, to make the warehouse into a ministry center, we wouldn't need to do a campaign if everybody here regularly gave 10% of their income. That's the truth of it. In case you didn't see it coming, I want to read for you one more time that Jesus said, life does not consist of one's possessions, even if you're wealthy. And then that passage that Jacob read for us, so don't store up for yourselves treasures here on earth, where stuff will ruin it. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where they can't be destroyed, where no one's going to steal it, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And Jesus said, be careful, watch out. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.